welcome everybody or no one, depending on who listens to this podcast.
It's probably gonna be the latter.
So this is our pilot episode of what we have not named our podcast of. So that's probably going to be one of our topics actually here in a little bit. But
$1,000 giveaway for the best name.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, we'll take any feedback, given that anyone participates. But no, so we plan to probably go for about 45 minutes to your typical podcast. And of course, too, there may be more than just the pilot, seeing how well it goes and everything like that. But so essentially, I guess we'll just go ahead and hop right into why we want to do this. I'm a pretty big fan of podcasts in general, and some of my favorites are like Rooster Teeth. They do a weekly podcast. Love all those guys there. And another one's the Comedy Button, and I love listening to them. And as far as like back when I used to listen to podcasts a lot, it was when I would be traveling, and there was just something about a good way to burn time was listening to podcasts, because again, you think about it, most podcasts were anywhere from 45 to an hour. And if you get really immersed into the podcast, in no time it's over and you've already burned an hour. And I'm talking about, I had 6.5 hour drives. So I would like queue up just so many podcasts.
Right.
Like I wouldn't listen for weeks just so that I would have 6.5 hours worth of podcasts.
I have taken the drive from Phoenix to Illinois 5 times, and I have never thought to do that. Yeah. I've always had my 3-minute songs, so then you have to listen to like 3,000 of them before you actually get home and back.
Yeah, well, either that or you listen to Free Pandora and you get 3 songs, and then you get probably about a minute worth of advertisements, and the same ones. And I've actually noticed that recently too with Pandora and Spotify, which we'll get into that in a little bit. But no, so again, I mean, my buddy and I wear my manners. I didn't even introduce ourselves. First of all, my name is Aaron, and I'll let the other gentleman introduce himself.
I go by, what'd you say, Mr. Banker? But
Mr.
Luke,
Banker.
yeah, it's Luke.
Yeah. Well, it's so that's our pseudo lost episode names if that ever comes to light. But no, for all intents and purposes, my mine is just Aaron, and
mine is just Luke.
Luke, yeah. So again, we normally have a pretty good amount of banter going on between us when we play video games, and who knows, maybe in the future what we may do is sort of a weird twist on playing video games while we have a podcast. I don't know how well that'll work out, because he and I like to rage pretty badly, and we want to try to keep this podcast at least
it all depends,
at least NC-17 perhaps. I don't know, like I know that's already as worse as you can get, but
there is unrated.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the worst.
That is, or going by the old ESRB rating of AO.
AO, yeah, adults only.
Yeah. And you don't see that anymore. So maybe we could bring them back. But so anyway, as far as the banter goes, we kind of got this idea of kind of wanting to just record, not so much for, and I know this sounds bad, for entertainment purposes, but almost as like a chronicling, I guess, or a journal in a way. But we feel like how we do it is entertaining, and that we would like for people to enjoy listening to it as well. But more so of kind of just for us being able to go back over time and
years
being able
later
to listen to this and then be like, oh wow, these guys, like I'm like such a moron back then, like
or
past Aaron,
way down the road, and emphasis on way. The kids, hey, you want to see how much of a douche your old pop used to be?
Your pop was, yeah. So I mean, who knows what we'll do with it, or if it'll even become a thing. We would like for it to. So we hope that is a thing. So again, just that was a pretty much just general of why we want to do the podcast. So I feel like as far as how the podcast even got conceived was pretty much when we when we like met, and how we met was I guess pretty nerdy.
A little bit.
It was a bit nerdy because, and you don't really hear of this going on very much, or at least I haven't. And two, it's probably a younger generation thing as far as, or maybe not even generation's the right word, maybe just an age thing. But we actually met playing video games. We actually met playing on Xbox Live through mutual friends.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. I mean, I remember when I was, in middle school and in high school, I playing on Xbox Live, playing Halo 2, I met all kinds of friends from all over the U.S. And that was just kind of the thing back then. Like, I mean, if that was your world, playing video games online, I mean, that's how you made friends. I mean, I'm not saying that you didn't have friends outside of your gaming, but if that was your hobby, chances are
it was a different type of friendship.
Yeah.
It was more like when we were talking about just before we started this with the whole invincibility over the phone. When you are talking to somebody completely brand new and it's not even face to face, that whole world is open. There is no barriers. They don't know you. They don't know your family. They don't know your past life. They don't know your wrongs, your rights, or anything like that. So, because I mean, I've been playing video games since I was 3 years old. I had my first console when I turned 3. It was the first Nintendo. And so I've been, of course, had the video game friends that come over to my house every day after school, and we'd play, old Halo on the original Xbox before, Xbox Live came out with Halo 2 and all that stuff. But then, like what you just said with that whole friendship, yeah, I've had a lot of, a whole bunch of friends, growing up through the Xbox Live, but this one's just a little bit different.
Right. And, so, I mean, it was one of those things where we already had the mutual friendship happening, and then from there we just, because what it was is we were playing Destiny, and for those of you who know Destiny, you either love or you hate it. And
that's exactly love or hate.
Because for those of you who are listening and may not know what Destiny is, it is an online only
first person World of
multiplayer.
Warcraft.
Yeah, it's a massive multiplayer online game, or MMO for short, and it's first person shooter. It's actually by the developers who made the Halo franchise, so maybe if that's a little bit closer to home to you guys, maybe not. Maybe this is all going over your head, but bear with us. So anyway, in short, a lot of that game, if you so choose, is bent on cooperation by people. They don't even necessarily have to be your friends, but it was one of those things where there was loot to get every week. There were quests to do every week, or bounties, I guess, probably the right term for it. And, and there were certain things that you couldn't do unless you had people to join you and play with you through these missions. And it was kind of one of those things where, I was in school. I guess Luke at the time, unfortunately, was unemployed. But I'd like to think that a friendship spawned out of that because of that.
Definitely.
And so it was one of those things where very quickly, and I mean, we're probably going to get a little bromosexual on this podcast, and I'm just going to say it hit very quickly as far as being able to
connect.
I guess connect, yeah. And so it was one of those things where like we played for the first time, like without our mutual friends on, and it was still one of those things where it was all very like, hey, you want to help me go do this real quick? Yeah, sure, why not? Da-da-da-da.
Yeah, very almost scripted feeling.
Yeah, and so it'd be like, oh well, yeah, and then I'd come back and be like, oh well, if you help me with this, what do you need help with? I'll help you with whatever mission or whatever you need, and it's all very nerdy and dorky and stuff. But I mean, it really was like it was one of those things where it was like, okay, I'm here to help this guy because he's very nice. He's helping me, level up my character. He's helping me get loot, and and I'm gonna. And he's
got to be at least somewhat decent because he's a friend of our mutual friend.
Yeah, and so he's got to be a good guy, and all this other stuff. And then I just remember because you can send messages through Xbox Live, and it'll forward on your phone if you have the app.
Right.
And I actually remember when I started getting messages from Luke through the Xbox app that was like, hey, like when are you getting on? Are you getting on today? Like, we need to do this, and this, or like this bounty that we did the other day is reset. We can do it again. Like, let's go. And so it was one of those things where I was like, damn, am I like making a friendship out of this? Because again, this was now foreign to me. Because, like I said, the last time that this had even ever happened to me was when I was in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this was back in like the 90s. This was back
right.
in like
and that's actually the same for me, because it just so happened the mutual friend that we just spoke of was the friend that I made in middle school that I hadn't talked to from middle school to when we meet. What was that? 2014. So from middle school and I'm 25, so that was what, 11 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Oh God,
yeah,
11
dude.
years ago when I met our mutual, like the friend that I met that Aaron was friends with, and then I didn't talk to him again until last year because I lost contact with him. So it's been since middle school for me too, since an actual real honest to God friendship occurred over Xbox Live.
Yeah, and because most of the time nowadays with the way that society is there's all types of like cyberbullying going on now, and and it really hits hard with competitive gaming, and I'm sure there's probably like if you Google, I'm sure there's a whole article, paper, research, whatever,
sure.
White paper on it. But I mean, it's legit. Like, I mean, some of the things that I hear at the time heard kids younger than me saying,
mm-hmm.
like stuff that I wouldn't even dream of saying, just saying and yelling it to me, and I'm just like, what? Like, how? But I mean, the only way that they heard it was on there to begin with.
Oh yeah, of course.
And so now it's just turned into like this weird cesspool of like just vulgar language and and just threats. Like, I mean, I've been threatened. The age old give me your address.
Yep, give me your address.
And I'm going to find you, and I'm going to I'm going to
beat your ass,
or I'm going to kill you.
Oh, I've heard that one too.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just insane, and so typically I don't even like when I go and play online games alone. I actually mute. Yeah, I actually mute everybody, and I don't talk to anyone because it's insane the amount of vulgarity that you receive, and it's too much. But anyway, that's a nice little tangent we went on. But so that's again kind of how we met, this foreign online meeting sort of thing, which I guess in a way you can almost kind of accept it, because with the way that technology is getting to be nowadays, it almost, I don't want to say seems normal, but you hear of other people making friends either on Facebook or Instagram or any other social media site. This was just our vice,
right,
among many. But so what I guess spiraled from immediate friendship turned into a bromance, and so it's one of these things where our level of friendship grew beyond just playing games with each other. Now again, I'm based in Tennessee, and Luke, you're in Arizona,
Phoenix, yeah.
And sometimes and was what, because you were in Illinois for a while when we met, right?
So when we first met, I moved in October. When did Destiny get released?
Last year, November.
So from only for a month was I in Illinois. So from that month we played Destiny. I was in Illinois, but then I actually moved back to Arizona at the 1st of October. So we were a 3-hour time difference.
Yeah.
3-hour time difference, and about 2 to 2,100 miles away.
Yeah. So as far as what we can do to hang out is still play video games for the most part. Unfortunately, we can't go out and grab a beer or go have a bros night out and go catch a movie or something. I don't know. But with that said, though, I mean, we're in constant communication with each other, whether it be through Snapchat, text message, whatever the case may be. And, it's funny because, we both, not to surprise you folks out there, but we both actually have respective others.
We do.
And
They know they're aware of the relationship.
Yeah, so they understand it. I think Luke's girlfriend caught on before my girlfriend did.
Well, that's because I've always lived since we've
met.
Right,
and it's only been recent that I actually started living with my girlfriend, and so it's just been one of those things where it's becoming understanding among everyone, the amount of love that we have for each other,
right?
And but with that said, there's only a few people in my life that I actually kind of like have this sort of level of friendship for, and I mean it's a couple people. The only other two people are really people that I graduated from high school with.
Same here.
And and by that time, if you've had friends from one of them I've actually been friends with since middle school. The other one I made friends with in high school. And even with high school, I mean, especially middle school, if they stay friends with you until you graduate high school, I mean, I feel like it's unless you're just a shitty person and you break all ties, that pretty much is almost like family status at that point.
Pretty much,
And
you've been too much and experienced too much together that because I have a friend. I even beat your record there. I have a friend that we actually met in preschool.
Nice.
From preschool on, it was always a pretty heavy relationship. And then, my other good best friend, he lived right down the street from me. So we met in 5th grade. I was in 5th grade. He was in 4th grade. He's your age. So we were friends for, since for graduation. But even towards that aspect, I don't talk to them near as much as I talk to you. Right. I even have the one that actually we met in elementary. I always was saying, hey, you got to move out to Arizona. You got to move out to Arizona. You got to do it.
Yeah.
Never could happen. It never worked out. But just recently, his fiance. Well, they're not engaged, but they're going to be married. So I call her his fiance anyway. But when she actually got a teaching job in Arizona, so they moved. So now they are literally here. Okay.
Wow.
So we're not even that far away from each other, and we still don't talk as much. And I'm not saying like it's like a win, like somebody wins over this or anything. I'm just trying to put into perspective,
right,
in such a short time frame, how much our friendship has.
And I mean, it has
would
been
be a good word.
Right, and I mean, and it is almost coming up. On a year, because I mean, again,
September, November. That's right.
Or what? Was it September?
It had to be longer than a month that I lived.
Okay, you know what? Because Bungie normally, and again, I'm going.
Wasn't it? Nerd. It's 9/9/14.
It's so it was September.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going nerd by saying that Bungie would always
Halo.
Do their game releases for Halo in November,
right?
So hence why I was thinking November immediately. But it was September.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, and so we're very close to coming up on a year of only knowing each other, and I treat him just as equal as people that I've known since middle school.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as that example goes, but so that's pretty much what our bromance is. It's all about. So
strong.
It's very strong.
So many snaps throughout the day.
Yeah. So and no nudies, by the way, for those who wonder. So we'll kind of break away from.
Are we lying on the podcast now?
I mean, maybe a little bit. I don't know, but anyway, so we'll kind of get out of that for a bit. So again, I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show here that this is only the pilot episode. We've recorded. I mean, I want to say we've recorded, but really we haven't. We just kind of took a stab right before we did this to kind of get a feeling for it, and it's actually pretty funny. We actually talked for about 45 minutes
for this.
Unfortunately, because it's stuff that we do for jobs, we don't want to share that.
Right.
Just because.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, in case it comes back to bite us in the butt, we don't want to release that. But I mean, that's for now. We're dubbing that the lost episode, and if job paths change, then we'll release it. But as of right now, But with that said, we kind of got a little bit of a take as far as how we feel doing a podcast. And so, bear with us for those of you who will listen. It may seem a bit out of the norm as far as what you're typically usually, listening to. Quality may not be that great, or we may go on rants. Like, we may not be structured. I mean, we've got a list here of things to talk about and everything, but it's not going to be necessarily fluent, and it may never be that fluent. And I've got a cat on my lap now, to just show you how random it is.
I guess this is the first time that we've done it, but I feel like that's not our personality.
Oh no,
we'll a new idea will immerse itself, and then we just go on and talk about that. So so for anyone that's looking for strict organization, or if they're looking for one specific topic, this may not be for you. We're pretty much we are going to have some structure, but it's not going to be like, hey, this week in the news necessarily, or it's not going to be a news show. It may not necessarily be like your favorite game podcast, but I assure you we'll hit literally on everything. And so in lies our predicament with what we should name this. I thought back long ago, because this podcast has been an idea for me for I'd say months now, and one of the first names that I thought, but it's too much of a sexual innuendo, I feel like, is what's on the old noodle. What's on the old noodle?
Yeah, and another thing to not sound so sexual would be like, what's on the mind, or something like that. But I kind of want it to be funny while not being like an absolute joke.
Sure.
So I feel like what's on the old noodle is funny, but I don't feel like people can take it totally seriously. Like, they're going to be like, oh, like, that's what she said.
Right.
And so I don't know. I mean, as far as names, like, what's on the mind sounds too serious, and what's on the old noodle is
too funny.
too funny. But yeah, so that's currently our situation for the podcast right now. Our primary concern, I guess you could say, would be just trying to think of a name for
I don't know that what's on the old noodle, that even though it is a little bit of a sexual endo, I mean, at the same time, I don't know if it'll be taken like that all the time.
Yeah, and maybe not. Well, I mean, in a pretty good example of something like that is going back to one of my favorite podcasts, Rooster Teeth. And for people that may happen to be Rooster Teeth fans, don't slay me for getting this wrong if I do, but I remember them in one of their episodes talking about how their name came to be and what they wanted to do when they first started doing videos and things of that sort. Was they wanted to be called Cockbite. And
Rooster Teeth, that's a thesaurus method.
So Cockbite wouldn't work in, I guess, a professional sense for them. Yeah, so to be clever and witty, they changed it to Rooster Teeth. And so I mean, it could be kind of something like that, I guess, but I mean, I guess for right now, I mean, we could stick with what's on the old noodle, or we could just call it the old noodle. And then
it could just be the old noodle,
the old noodle, and go from there. And if people have a problem with it, it doesn't sit well or something, then we'll change it. But anyway, so I mean, that's kind of what's up with the podcast name. So I guess I got a couple things lined up that actually is video game related. So we're recording this, and again, something that I completely screwed up on and that we need to announce at the beginning of the episode is this episode was recorded on May 30th, 2015. And it is 4:44 my time, which means it is 1:44
my time.
Luke's time.
And we've been on air for 25 minutes.
Yes, we have. And so one of the things that I wanted to announce was not this past Tuesday, but I guess last Tuesday, the latest expansion for Destiny came out. And yes, we're still playing this game a year later.
After a little bit of a break, when I made a
yeah. Well, and that's the thing with Destiny is, and that's actually one of the big things that a lot of critics, video game websites, journalists, whatever you want to name them, have actually been reporting on.
Haters.
Well, it's not even necessarily haters. I feel like they do make a few good points. Is
sure,
that
sure.
Destiny
Haters do.
Yeah, but Destiny was dying. They had done an expansion previous to this one called The Dark Below, and it was garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really bad. Now, I mean, I say it's garbage, and I'm being too, in my own opinion, I'm being too harsh. I did enjoy it. Now, I will say that it lacked very much so as far as content. I mean, it was one of those things people paid $20 for.
Right.
And we were given maybe 4 missions and a handful of new bounties that were made. I feel like the bounties that we were given were made specifically difficult to warrant longevity, because they wanted this to last as long as they could. But I think coming out with an expansion for the first time, and I mean, and let's be fair, this is Bungie's, as far as I am aware. Now, people can correct me or whatever. This is Bungie's first MMO. They've done video games since forever. I mean, they made ton. Well, I don't want to say tons, but they made a few good noteworthy games before they did Halo. But as far as I know, this is their first MMO, and they're doing pretty well for themselves as far as this being their first time.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, so with that, they did kind of drop the ball on the Dark Below expansion. Like I said, they only had a few.
The best way I could sum it up is it felt like when they slapped the name expansion on it. When you think of expansion, you think of you're gonna have so many more hours of different content. You're gonna have so much more. It's gonna be something new to the game. Right. It felt like a weekend update that added something different to the game.
It did, and honestly, they had done a little event. Actually, and what is insane to me, and this is kind of why I think people got on the bandwagon as far as ripping on it, is they did events. They did little
like the Iron Banner.
Right, they did little multiplayer events, and they did a PvE, which is a player versus environment update. Where, like Luke said, it was over a weekend, and it was for Queen Bounty. The Queen's Bounties is what it was called. And it was awesome. You had these new bounties that were just geared for this person. When you completed them, you got rep, which gave you certain items, weapons, shaders is what they're called, which would give you a
different look.
It's more of a customizable look for your character. And
make it more unique.
Right, and that was over a weekend. That was absolutely
and that's why I feel like everybody was so. That's why it was a hit with the Queen's thing, because it was something that they didn't have to do anything extra for. They didn't have to go out and shell any extra money. They literally woke up, and they woke up, put in the game, and it was there. It wasn't okay. Well, I had to go get this expansion pass. That's why I feel like the first expansion got so much hate. It's because I honestly, personally, this is a matter of opinion, liked the Queen's bounties more than the Dark Below.
Oh, yeah. Well, because like I said, I feel like they purposely made the bounties for the character that they call Eris is the main person for the Dark Below expansion. They made her quests, or her bounties, not the quests. The quests were actually quite easy, but the bounties that she gave after the fact were a bit difficult, and I feel like they did that to draw out time. Specifically mentioning that one of them was that you had to melee these exploding enemies. You had to do it 5 times without dying. Because if you died, you reset. And I remember having an excruciatingly long, horrible experience of trying to get these 5 kills. Now, of course, there's some gurus out there that probably did it within 20 minutes. I mean, maybe even quicker. But I know that I myself, and looking it up online, a fair amount of other people were experiencing difficulties with it too. And I just felt like that was sort of an unnecessary route to do for a bounty.
And I know we've talked about this before. Do you think it was Bungie's way of... Remember how when we used to play it, we used to talk that the term... I'm trying to think of a different term for it without having to be vulgar about it. But they were very hurt by the community because people were saying this and this or this and this. And then we felt sometimes they came out with something as in like a big middle finger, like, hey, here you go.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, that's a good point.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep, and so what was happening, or what is happening still to this day, and I can sympathize with both the community and I can sympathize with Bungie on this. So what was happening is Bungie puts out, and I'm going to say it, and a fantastic game. I feel like they've always delivered high quality products.
I'll stand by it too.
Yeah, so they came out with Destiny. It's not for everybody. It is a grind game for anyone who's played. Like I was saying earlier about how we met, it was doing
the
repetitive
same
bounties every week, but
and maybe that's why we enjoyed it so much, is because we had somebody to share the experience, and we didn't have to just keep doing the same thing over and over. We had conversation to keep us alive.
Right, and and the point is just you're doing the same bounties, but all the while you are as slow as that may seem, you are reaching an end goal, and it may not happen right away. Other people may reach that end goal quicker than you, but you are reaching it in some way or another. And so it's one of those things where the community was coming together and figuring out ways to
exploit
the system. Yeah, they were exploiting raids, especially the Vault of Glass. I remember I hadn't even participated in the Vault of Glass, and there I'd already heard of ways to
skip through things.
Yeah, I'd already heard of a way to knock off one of the enemies who stood on a platform, and if you hit him with just the right amount of grenades at the right angle, you could knock him off, and boom, enemy was dead. You didn't have to sit there and fight, and you were even rewarded an extra item drop, loot drop.
Right, because you did it so fast. Now, that wasn't Bungie rewarding them for exploiting. That reward was in place for people that were actually good at the game and good at teamwork. Because a little background on a raid. A raid is where you have to have an actual 6 group of people, and you cannot do it without teamwork. So Bungie's reward was, hey, if you're a good team, you get through this, you're going to have an extra item drop. But everybody that played this game was, hating on it. We're like, oh no, we're just gonna find a way to exploit it. We're gonna knock off the boss. We're gonna get that extra item loot with not having to actually work for it.
Yeah. So it was just one of those things where, it wasn't just.
No, there was the cave with the instant leveling, the Ingram dropping.
Yep, there was the infamous loot cave that everybody exploited. They patched that.
Which I am gonna say something in the Bungie's favor. I love how they made the little voice come up in that little cave, as in like a ha ha ha, like we stopped it, but so good job for finding it.
Yeah. So before we get, I know some people are listening and we're mentioning
stuff that they have no idea about.
So what the loot cave was, it was an area in the Cosmodrome, which is old Russia Earth. Again, people who are listening to this that hasn't played the game or doesn't like video games, I'm sorry. But it was an area where enemies would spawn rather sporadically because there were, it was to keep the environment alive, I guess, so to speak.
And it was open world.
Right, because it's an open world, and there's supposed to be enemies kind of running around the area, and you could kill those enemies, obviously. But what would happen is you actually would start getting a group of people together, and you would eliminate all the enemies on the ground, and then all you would have to do then is aim at the cave and wait for the enemies to spawn again, and they would come out in droves. I mean, we're talking
hundreds a minute.
Yeah, and it was insane. And at times when you kill enemies, you get what are called engrams. And
basically these are just items for your character.
Right. They're random until you get them decrypted. I'm not going to go into the whole mess of it, but right? So essentially, people were doing this for items, and so basically, this went on for
I want to
I
say
don't
a,
really
a
know how
week. I want
long.
to say about a week.
It was longer than
Because
that.
because we thought they were going to patch it because they did a weekly patch every Tuesday, and then they didn't until that next Tuesday. So 2 week long.
Yeah. So I mean, it went on for quite some time. I feel like, but yes, Bungie did patch it. I myself, excuse me, found it boring.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even want to, even if it meant the guarantee of random loot. How they obtained it is boring and is not a game. It's a chore.
Yep.
And in its own right,
they talk about
Destiny.
They complain about grinding. That was the most grinding thing I've ever done.
Exactly. Because that's what I want to say. I was like, in its own right and with its own respect, Destiny is a chore, but you can make it a fun chore,
right?
And you can make it a game. But what you were doing with that loot cave was just strictly a chore.
Uh-huh.
And but instead of Destiny, or excuse me, Bungie giving the big middle finger after they patched it, like Luke said, they got very clever with it, and they put a piece of the lore in with the cave, and you could go to a pile of ash and bone, and you could interact with it. And is it Crota?
Yeah, and he like laughs at you and says 1 billion kills or something isn't enough.
Right.
Because
so whether it's Crota,
the stat came out. Bungie said like the stat was over like some billion people, or not billion people, but billion enemies were killed in that loot cave.
Yeah.
So they made a joke.
Yeah, so I mean, I should probably fact check before I get on and start talking about this stuff, which we'll learn in the future. But whether it was Crota or somebody else, point is that they actually got a character from within the game's lore and got it to, in character and, and everything to, make a funny crack at the people going in there to check it out, or the people that participated in the loot cave. So, that was kind of one middle finger to the community. Another middle finger was basically I know that they fixed the raid for the boss that you could push off the platform.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you could, they patched it once. And what actually happened is that the community found another way, if I'm remembering correctly, they found another way to get them off of the platform after Bungie had patched it. So they came back and they patched it again. But the community's response to that is insane, because of course they were like, oh, well, Destiny's butthurt because, we broke their game and they don't, and while I feel like part of a game is making it your own, you should not, if the developers choose to change their game, which you're playing, then I feel like you should reserve them the right. Now, if it unfortunately to that individual breaks that game and makes it unplayable to you, then I'm sorry, but stop
it's still
playing
their
the game.
Product.
Yeah, stop playing the game. Go find one that's more tailored to you. And I mean, life goes on.
Exactly. Well, and I feel I feel like the reason that there is so many people that get so angry and upset about these sort of things is, do you ever go and see somebody go into a museum and then they look at a piece of art and then they say, okay, I like that art. And then they might come back and the artist might have been like, you know what? I didn't like it. I changed it. And now that person hates it. Do they say anything more about that piece of artwork? No, because it was that artist's artwork. They could have said, hey, I liked it the way before, but I could see where you changed it. I feel like the generations have lost the thought process of a video game is art. It is so much art put together. It's writing, there's story, there's character development, there's literally art in it, graphic art.
Yeah.
And I feel like when these people get so upset, or like the term we use, butthurt, when something changes, that you know what? Sorry, because that artist did not like their art anymore, and they wanted to change said art.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the thing. It's like nowadays too, especially with everything being online, games are being updated and patched all the time,
right?
And it's just something that you can't really get away from,
right?
Yeah,
especially if you're diving into the online community, because if you're playing an online game, of course there has to be an update, but an offline means like the old original NES, that game's always going to be that game. There is no updates to that game.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So I mean, so yeah, it was just one of those things where, I mean, bringing it back full circle here, I think there were certain bounties that were given in the Dark Below that were purposely difficult. I mean, I'm still going to go for the longevity. It could have still been
the
like,
middle finger.
hey, try to get around this one or
Right.
something like that. Which, in my opinion, I don't think game companies should look at it that way. I think that they should tackle it as an obstacle, but they should look at it, unfortunately, taking the negative and turning it into constructive.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that's the thing. It's like everyone experiences negative criticism, especially when something gets put online, because everybody has access to it. And once again, you're not speaking to someone face to face. You're doing it either on a computer screen, or whatever the case may be. And so you're invincible at that point. And so yeah, the community for anything can be unreasonably harsh. And but I think Bungie is still holding it together pretty well. And again, the real reason why we talked about this House of Wolves coming out, I want to say that I feel like they definitely bounced back from this one. I know that you have only, I guess, seen a lot of stuff about it. I don't know that you've actually played it yet.
Play. Nope, not yet.
Yeah. So, for me, actually playing it, gosh, they've really done a 180, and I think they've actually pulled a 180 on the community as well, because, I mean, the amount of positive over negative for this expansion, compared to the base game and the expansion of the Dark Below, is insane as far as positive outweighing. And I mean, as far as the story's great. I mean, the story is still a bit short. I mean, you only get a handful of new missions. Some missions are like 3-tiered, so you'll have like 3 different parts to them and things like that to kind of draw it out. But it doesn't make it feel drawn out. It definitely immerses the player more than the Dark Below did. And so instead of adding a new raid, because I know a lot of people, and me myself included, were super enraged by not having a raid in this new expansion. And what they instead decided doing was a horde mode, is essentially what it's called, which is basically you and 3 other people instead of 6. Go into these different rooms, and you fight these waves of non-playing characters, or AI, and they're progressively harder. You can change the difficulty, and the harder that you go, difficulty-wise, the better loot that you obtain. And there's chests that you can open up with only using treasure keys that you can either get from doing that, which is called that event is called the Prison of Elders, and you can do it once per character, per difficulty, every week.
Okay.
So you could do it on I think it's a 28 difficulty, a 32, and a 35. I think. I mean, don't quote me on that. I've only done the 28 or the 30 difficulty, which is the starting one. I've only done it one time, but a lot of the other stuff that they added into it was these natural occurring bounties that happen in the world in real time. So you accept the bounty, but then you have to go and patrol these planets where the enemy is going to be, and you don't know when they're going to show up. Until somebody finds out the timetable,
right,
and
puts it out app on the phone.
Yeah. But as of right now, it's still sort of random as to when they'll show up. But the thing is that now it's bringing the community together, because you'll go down and you won't be partied up with these people, but where it's an open world, people will be waiting. And now it's turning back into a group experience where and that's the thing. That's the beauty of Destiny, is that you don't even have to talk to these people if you don't want to, but it's bringing people together to take down this more difficult than normal enemy. And it's producing teamwork. It requires that you do teamwork. And so that's what I like to see in games, is a lot of teamwork. And as far as multiplayer goes, they've done a lot with what they call the Crucible. and with that, they've increased the rank as far as like how quickly you gain rank, how quickly you gain what they call crucible marks that you can use on items, and as far as like gear for your character or weapons for your character. And what you can also receive after each match is a random drop, and those drops have increased significantly. I remember even base game and in the Dark Below, receiving what they call a legendary weapon was next to impossible. It was very rare and frustrating, in all honesty. And
did the Dark Below change anything to the multiplayer?
I don't think so. I think all that they did, all they did was the maps. And so with this, I can tell you right now, I went from maybe getting 1 to 2 legendaries, every once in a while.
I'm talking months, though. I think I got maybe like 1 or 2 legendary items from the Crucible in my total playtime.
Yeah. So to just say it, I mean, it was next to impossible to get them beforehand. And now, in one day, in one session of probably about 3 hours of gameplay, I got 2.
Oh, wow.
Which is unheard of. So, but what that, to me, and it's great on their part, because what they're doing is they're feeding that hunger that the community has. And when you sit here and you get a new weapon, or it doesn't even have to be a new weapon, sometimes you can get the same old weapon and you can break it down for materials, but it still drives you to want to play, because you're like, well, damn, am I going to get another weapon next match, or what I think what's going to happen, or am I going to get ascendant materials or stuff that I can take into one of the new other new events that House of Wolves has brought, which is called Temples of Osiris. Excuse me, Prison of Elders is the PvE. The Temples of Osiris is the PvP Crucible-esque event, where basically you have a scorecard, and you can go up to, I think it's 9 wins, and you can have up to 3 losses. Once you go 9-0, or you go however many in 3 losses, that will determine the prize that you get from the event giver. And if you get 9-0, you go to this place called the Lighthouse, which is on Mercury, I want to say. I've never been, so don't quote me on that either. But if you go 9-0 and go to the Lighthouse, apparently the loot is just absolutely insane. And so
is that a cat scratching?
Yeah, it is. Actually, give me one moment. This is embarrassing. All right. Yeah. So again, like with the House of Wolves expansions, I mean, they really turned it around. They really made up for, I guess, kind of what the disappointment of the Dark Below was, and I mean, they just really turned it around. So I encourage you all who were maybe skeptical of picking up House of Wolves, or who haven't even played the game or anything, to just give it a shot and see how it treats you. I mean, especially by the time that you guys will maybe listen to this, if ever, Destiny should be fairly cheap, at least to get started and just see what you think about it. But it is a grind, and if that's something that you're not into, then by all means just pass it over. But
go play Halo.
So
instead.
As far as and speaking of Halo, we'll go into our next release. Was actually late last night. I got a
smart glass message.
Yep, got a smart glass message. Which smart glass is Microsoft's Xbox One app, companion app, and
which if you have an Xbox or a 360 or an Xbox One, and you don't have the smart glass, get it. Your life will be so much better. Yeah, and so. So with that, I got a message on there, and they finally, I say finally, I wasn't and by they, we mean 343 Studios, which is now the new makers of Halo, which used to be Bungie, the previous game we just discussed.
Yeah, it's the anti-Bungie. So they released a port of Halos 1, 2, 3, and 4, which were obviously all the primary. There were some other games mixed in between, but they did all 4 and released it onto one disc. They made everything as far as multiplayer and campaign sort of seamless. across all play fields, and it tanked. It was terrible.
So bad. So bad.
Yeah, the game was not ready for release by any means, but they wanted to keep the traditional what is it? It's November
release date.
November, yeah, but is it November 14th? Typically, is when it used to come out.
Yes, and I think that's when it was, wasn't it? The 14th.
I think it was,
or somewhere right around
double
there. I'm gonna get that,
that
Halo Master Chief Collection release date was actually on November 11th, 2014.
Okay. So I was 3 days off, but yeah. So they wanted to keep that date in the spirit of Halo, and
which for the fans, it makes sense why they would want to do that. Yeah. I can understand their reasoning for the November release.
Yeah,
but
right. But the thing is too, and I hate to kind of go off on a more technical sense, but as far as like standards and guidelines for IEEE, is that you don't release a product that is not
ready.
To be released. You don't do that. That is wrong. That is, I mean, it's just.
Pharmaceutical companies don't release drugs before testing the drugs.
Yeah, exactly, and so
food can't be released before the FDA tests that food.
Right, and so I mean, with that said, I mean they released a product that was not within the guidelines of what was stated.
Acceptable.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't acceptable. It wasn't what was stated. They had a 40 gig patch day one, and that's even if you got the game to work. I mean,
right.
the campaigns, I will say, like the campaigns and everything were playable. You could play them now, of course, for
individually.
Yeah, you could play them individually. But as far as the multiplayer, which a lot of us were, I myself and Luke too, were looking forward to,
and I think we can speak for most of the Halo fans out there.
Yeah, that they were.
The Halo is a great story. I mean, they've even gone. I know this is we're going off a little tangent here too, but I'm such a avid fan of Halo, just because I grew up with it. But their story is so. It's grown so much. They have books out now. They have the series on Netflix, the Forward Unto Dawn. They have the new Nightfall series. So the story, yes, is a very important aspect of the Halo franchise. 343 did a great job bringing those old nostalgic campaigns over to the new gen console. But even though the story is so great, what made Halo Halo is the multiplayer experience.
Yeah.
And they failed.
Right. Well, and of course, too, going back to the generation, I mean, especially for Halo 2, multiplayer was what we did. I mean, day in and day out. I mean, that's what my friends and I growing up, we woke up, we played a game before we caught the bus to go to school, and then we'd take the bus home, hop right back onto Halo 2, play that until we were either forced to do homework or forced to go to bed.
Same with me.
And then you would rinse, repeat. So it was Halo 2 multiplayer. Any other time
Halo 2 broke the charts. I mean, for anybody that's listening that doesn't know Halo 2, I guarantee 99.9% of you, if anybody does actually listen, has heard of the franchise Halo. And the reason for that, Halo 2, which is the reason this new video game, the Halo Master Chief Collection, was released is because it was the anniversary edition of Halo 2, not Halo. Okay, so we've already done the anniversary edition of Halo. But even though Halo, the original game, was a breakthrough, Halo 2 is the one that made Microsoft's Xbox the console to get. I remember watching the documentary that came with the Master Chief Collection, or the one before. I think they released it a little bit before on the Halo channel.
Yeah.
But if you haven't watched it, watch it. Even if you're not, even if you don't play Halo or you've never heard of it, it's still a good documentary because you get to see how much of a world changer this video game was. I remember one of a quote from the documentary was, Halo 2 game sales outdid any box office ever.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing, especially for the video game community, because it was such a massive growing field for a long time. It grew from Nintendo up, because you can just say Atari, but Nintendo is really where it broke through. But Microsoft broke through with Halo 2 as opposed to Halo. So which is the reason for this anniversary edition game we have now.
Right. And so with that, I mean, it was unplayable for months. I mean, especially at least one full month, the game was just unplayable. You were sitting in lobbies
for hours.
For hours. I think you and I only sat in one for probably, and this is still way too long, and people are going to be like, you guys are idiots. But I mean, I remember we sat searching for a multiplayer online game for about 45 minutes.
Yep.
And nothing happened. We just sat in there.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully we're
good enough friends.
We're such good friends that we actually kept each other entertained as far as talking for that 45 minutes. But it took forever. And even then you weren't guaranteed a spot. So Microsoft turned around and gave everyone that owned the game from launch day, or I think up until the month that it was
December
quote unquote being
December 19th.
Yeah.
December 19th that day.
Yeah, was everybody got a free month of Xbox Live Gold, which allows you to play these games online, for those of you who don't know. And then later, and then they had said that there was more to come. And so then sometime after that announcement, they finally said that, hey, we're going to port over Halo 3 ODST, which, for those of you who aren't familiar with that is a side game to the Halo series. Happens right within Halo 2. And happens right within Halo 2, but you play different characters. You play Marines, I think.
Right.
It's ODSTs, right? Orbital Drop Shock Troopers.
Yes.
Yeah, so you play as those, not Marines, because I'm an idiot. But anyway, they just released that port, which I'm sure we're actually probably going to get ready to play here for a few minutes. And so, and they apparently redid another Halo 2 map. So, we're both very excited to see how that kind of goes. But the game is working now.
Yes,
finally, after all this time, they finally just did what they needed to have done when it was supposed to launch. It is working. We're raging on multiplayer games, which is all we ever wanted.
Right. That's it. That's all.
We just wanted to yell at the other team without them hearing us and be mad together
and make awesome YouTube clips.
yeah. So, that's it. But look, I know this has been a really rocky podcast episode. I'm sure people are sitting here thinking like, what the hell did I just listen to for 58 minutes?
Dazed and confused.
Yeah, but I swear we'll try to get a little bit more of a structure going on. Again, this was a lot more introduction than it was a full-blown episode, and next time we'll actually be dealing with more content and not so much how Luke and I have a bromance going. But anyway, I guess that'll do it for the pilot. I hope for those of you who did listen enjoyed it, and we'll listen to the next one if we choose to do any more. But anyway,
I had fun.
Listening. Yeah. All in good fun.
So
that's it. So we'll hopefully catch you next time.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.